Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special discussion looking at the future of fit tech, well tech, health tech. It seems to be booming no matter where you are in the world. Today, I'm joined with two fantastic speakers, both advisors, entrepreneurs, and investors of their own sorts. First up, Emma Barry, the Global Fitness Authority advisor, author, and also now Chief Creative Soul at Good Soul Hunting. Fantastic to have you here, Emma. And also Mo Iqbal, founder and CEO of SweatWorks, who have now become the preeminent creative digital agency for all things fitness, wellness, and sports. Mo, Emma, great to have you here. Let me kick off with the first question, which is looking around at the data sets at the moment. There's tons of trends moving around the market. I'll come to you first, Em. What are you paying most attention to when you're looking at trends and data points out there in this ever wild world?
Well, look, my head's spinning right now because you and I, Ross, every time we speak in between drinks, so much shifts. And we've just been talking about, is there any other conversation right now than Meta? I've just got all the CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, all the information coming at me, and I'm very excited to attend that in January. And when I look back 2 years ago, everything was AI and 5G. And now it's all metaverse and health and everything coming together, and what big tech is going to be doing with all that data and how it's being used in ways that will be useful for us in the future. So for me, I'm just at this head exploding type phase after we've been in this for 18 months, 2 years, where I just see the whole world is now rearranging in an even bigger universe, if you like, and we're really beginning to combine all those elements. It was interesting chatting to Mo just before the call about to see all the realities finally coming to fruition and actually getting good to the point that we get the present of presence. And I think truly being there and truly feeling those worlds. So for me, like, data is just everywhere. It's who's got it, who's teaming up with who to use it, in which ways that are going to serve humanity. And that's what I'm spending a lot of my time right now really thinking about, but particularly in the fit techs. And I'm sure we'll get to that in the conversation.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me back on again. Just to carry on what Emma said, yes, obviously with Facebook and Zuckerberg's announcement, that's been the talk, and what is this bigger universe? I'm going to take it to the other direction around where consumers are. I think consumers over the last 18, 20 months have actually become well-versed and educated. And the points that we are looking at is one around privacy. They've now understood that, wow, there is a lot of data that is being tracked. And I think that they're going to hold brands and companies accountable for how they protect their data. You are concerned about money in your bank, and you want to make sure that when you go to the bank to take your money out, the money's there. And there are rules and regulations in place to protect that. But what really protects data, especially data as it relates to the field that we're in? So that's a big trend that we're looking at now. And the second big one too is really healthcare, at least here in the United States and potentially beyond. I think the healthcare industry is ripe for disruption, and the convergence between the space that we're in fitness and wellness and healthcare is getting closer and closer. And I think it's going to converge in 2022. And there are two particular companies that we're paying close attention to around that. The first is being Apple. Apple's got the mechanic, the infrastructure, the captured audience to truly disrupt it, and the cash as well. And the second is Amazon. Amazon, again, has the platform, has the infrastructure, unlimited funding, and they've quietly launched Amazon Care, which has been hugely successful for people that have been a part of it. So those two organizations are truly ripe to take on this massive behemoth healthcare industry here in the United States. And I think everyone else is going to be, how can they play a role there? How can we now take the learnings that we've had in wellness to truly make an impact on healthcare?
Now, we'll go down many rabbit holes, ladies and gentlemen, the first of which will be looking at company-specifically deals and also what's been happening in the marketplace across 2021. We saw an explosion of capital coming into the market across 2020 and 2021. Looking across at all the money that was flowing into the marketplace, it really has moved the market so quickly. Have there been certain deals, certain companies across the past couple of years that have really impressed you?
For me, it's been more the diversity of the skill sets and the capital that's coming together, which has been most interesting to me. So we've been stuck in our little myopic fitness industry for the last 50 years, and all of a sudden it's broadened out into something broader called lifestyle, and it's broadened out into something that is going to include, as Mo just mentioned there, medical health, and there's going to be this whole ecosystem of how we live, rather than just, this is the little slice of pizza that we operate in, and that's a little slice over there. So we know data is going to be that red thread that's going to pull it all together, because that knows everything about us, I guess our digital twin, right? Who am I? What are all the ways that I show up digitally, as well as in the real world? So when I look back over the last 18 months, I think of, what were the deals that sort of went, or oh, that's interesting. And to me, it sort of started with Lululemon and Mirror, because back in the day, we never really thought athleisure had anything to do with our industry other than stuff that you might wear to the gym or something like that. So just looking at athleisure as a whole industry. And then when you roll that forward, you're now looking into, textiles that now have sensors, and that was beginning to pop through at CES 2 years ago. So we get way beyond just the wristband or the heart rate, and we really get into, the deep diagnostics of the human body and what's happening in real time. And so I think that was quite fascinating to me. Peloton, of course, everything they do is always slightly surprising at the time. No one saw Precor coming. They might say they did, but no one did. No one saw Precor coming. But then actually, bringing in things like Beyonce and truly bringing the power of celebrity. And these are not just celebrities with a great set of legs. These are celebrities with a whole business behind them who know how to set humanity alight and give hope and offer fashion and contribute creatively and all of these things. So those sorts of things are very interesting to me. I think, I live locally with Beachbody here. So I think even, when you look at the Beachbody mix, Forest Road, and you look at those roll-ups and those powers coming together, you're looking at an old infomercial company that went online that's now interactive. And I now look at productions like Bod Interactive, which is you're basically interacting with all these people on screens live in this workout and unleashing that huge community that Beachbody have. So things like that are very interesting to me. Obviously, we were all at Ursa when ClassPass and MindBody dropped. So that was, two big unicorns coming together and, playing a different part. And, a lot of people were worried, a little bit, because that's like, that's quite a big coming together. So things like that are interesting to me. And of course, with my past in Equinox, I find it very interesting to SPAC or not to SPAC with Equinox and what will happen with that great brand. And then, of course, I'm always following the F45s, the Exponentials, as they've now got 10 in their suite, I believe now. So just watching the consolidation. So diverse companies coming together is very interesting to me. And then what they're going to do with that as they bring their data sets, their communities, their markets, their know-how together, and how it's going to affect us in the next 3 to 5.
Yeah, Emma, I did not know you were out in Santa Monica with Beachbody. I'm out there quite a bit. We work with Beachbody. Glad you love BODi. And I just want to, Ross, carry on to what Emma said. Emma gave a tremendous overview. I would have said all of the same things, starting with Lulu and Mirror. And I think they were just testing the water. So I want to take it a bit more onto the finance side. I do think money's going to be slowing down, and that's really driven by 2 reasons. One, during the pandemic, there was a lot of excitement around anything that was helping with this transformation of working at home or working from wherever you are. So you saw companies like Zoom, we're on Zoom right now, explode during the pandemic and then come back to what I think is a more realistic valuation. The second driver of this is really SPACs and how SPACs are viewed here in the United States. I think that SPACs were wonderful for companies who saw an opportunity to go public, who wanted to get capital to execute on their initiatives. And it was relatively cheap, relatively easy money. I was a part of the SPAC with Beachbody. So I was very close with that particular one. And what we found is that most SPAC companies, over 90% of them, have underperformed in the market since they were released. And I think what the market is learning is that, the IPO process is rigorous and time-consuming for a reason. You've got these checks and balances in there for a reason. Now, unfortunately, Emma mentioned a few companies that went public through SPAC this year, notably Beachbody, Exponential, and F45, and they're all to some degree have underperformed. So I think we're going to see a slowdown in SPACs. I don't think we're going to see a slowdown in investments in the category. And number one, you've got to mention is Whoop and SoftBank's investment there, right? So I'm going to pull that one in, valuating Whoop and Will's company at $3.2 billion. So I'm excited for that because I think what that's done is raise the profile of Whoop and wellness in general. I mean, Whoop has done a phenomenal job in really commercializing this idea of recovery and strain and effort, something that Garmin, Polar, and others have done for over a decade. You can go to Training Peaks, and they've been doing that for a very, very long time. So I'm like, okay, but you know what, though? It was packaged really well, and they did a great job in telling the story, and they made it easy to share. So they innovated something that was there in a subpar wearable device. So that's one I'm paying close attention to, and that particular category, mindfulness and wellness. The other one, Emma already mentioned Peloton. They continue to do well. They continue to be the market leader in a space that has so many doors open for a new player to come in. But they've continued to innovate. There's talk about, I think more than talk now, that they're going to add a new modality with rowing coming in. They've added, really focused on music and artists as a key component. They've recently announced with Jill Foley her new apparel line, so getting into the athleisure space. So I just think they're kind of attacking this from all fronts. So, and of course, the Precourt acquisition, which opens up their manufacturing capabilities here in the US and hospitality as well.
No, it was great to see so much capital go into bricks and mortars business. You touched on Exponential, you touched on F45. There was obviously the good IPO to get away from Lifetime. So great to see that get away. iFit, of course, just recently pulled their IPO. The market's getting a little bit shaky, a little bit volatile, perhaps not getting the valuation they want. Where do you think perhaps that you're going to see maybe more capital flow in 2022? Mo touched on this a little bit with maybe more sensor-based companies getting a little bit more a little bit more capital coming their way. CRMs, of course, might go under a bit more consolidation with the news from MindBody. Is there certain specific tech segments you see benefiting more versus the bricks and mortar in 2022?
Yeah, so I think, and yeah, I can't believe I missed Whoop, but, and if you saw Unlocked, the 4.0 and just where the whole wearables market is going now, it's really coming off the wrist and, eventually into the body, right? It's just going to basically be an interface with the body. So I think there's going to continue to be a lot of investment there just because it does reach across all those sectors, from athleisure to fitness to wellness to health, all of that good stuff. So I would expect that. As part of my work with the fit tech company based out of Munich, we're beginning to look a lot at the fit techs, a lot into Mo's space as well. And I do have a particular fascination, and it's the sort of unsung hero in many ways, or heroine perhaps, which is the fem tech or fem fit tech. So it's already $1 trillion industry. It's already over half the population. It is a very underserved community. And when you look back on deep data sets and what's happened in the past, a lot of that has been based on male stats and just basically taking a fairly broad instrument in terms of data. So I think there's going to be a lot there as we begin to learn the human body, but also through the female lens. So I think there's a lot of stuff happening there. I do believe that the sensors and a lot of the realities, like I'm sure Mo sees a lot of these as well, but there are just so many early stage startups hyper-personalizing and looking at so many subsections of fitness, health, living, and even the outdoors. The other thing which I find quite hilarious right now is that we're sitting here contemplating the metaverse at the same time as we're going hiking and camping, and we sort of have all these polarities that are really pulling us across the human experience as we sort of sit, many of us still held in place at home, really thinking through things. So, I think the investment's going to keep following fit tech, keep following wearables, keep following wellness, because we know, we are all in a mental health crisis constantly, and that's only kind of got worse. And I think technology, while it has some ways that it can help, also doesn't help it, because that pulls us into something that we also can't control. And, we just have to look at all the stats on our teenagers to know pretty much what social media has done to their mental state. So I think there'll be a lot of investment in those sorts of places. And then we're going to continue to see, I believe, medical fitness. Let's see how well the fitness industry can advocate for itself in terms of essential. But I think in a way, all of it's going to roll up anyway, because people see the value of movement and the value of looking after one's body. And then they also see the cost, the health cost, and that earlier point that Mo made about, we have to change the way that we look after ourselves and the way that we medicate, don't medicate, serve our people to be healthier, because we're really not doing a great job right now. So some of the places I would see, money going.
Sorry, go ahead, Rob.
You work with a lot of companies outside of fitness, Mo. You're working with wellness, you're working with sports companies as well. I suppose the glaring obvious to us is there are so many large tech companies coming into this space just now who are experts at technology and data. It's not something a lot of the traditional fitness companies have ever really been established upon. You're working with companies to try and get them through this hump, to try and transform themselves digitally. Is it possible for fitness to transform themselves digitally to compete with what are the kind of massive tech brands out there in the marketplace?
Yeah, Ross, that's a great question. In fact, even before this recording, we were talking about, IRSA, right? And some of the changes that we've seen there. The first thing to recognize is that, we are all in the fitness or wellness industry, if you want to call that, together. And if we're going to be honest about that, we've got to change our KPIs and how we measure ourselves to reflect that. So what does that mean? I don't want to get into another meeting that talks about New Year's memberships and New Year's resolutions. It's ridiculous. It's frustrating to even hear that. Focus on the consumer. The mission here at SweatWorks is very clear, and that's wellness for all. And I think that if these wellness brands or fitness brands or gyms or operators or at-home only products want to compete with the bigger tech brands, the one thing that the bigger tech brands do is that they are consumer brands. They're focused on the consumer. And that is how they measure themselves. They look at NPS scores, all of the metrics are based around consumer engagement, and that's where you need to start. So transform your shifting from revenue. While revenue is important and obviously critical, but focus on the consumer engagement and the consumer themselves. So if we could then improve the consumer journey and help them on the journey towards wellness, even if it's incremental steps, these brands will win. The one thing that they have going for them, which the bigger tech companies don't have, is they have trust and they have a captured audience. Most people do not trust the big tech companies, right? If you took a survey and say, do you trust your local CrossFit gym or your local boutique, large boutique studio like Orange Theory Fitness with your data, or do you trust Facebook? Most people, and we know this because we've done surveys, would trust Orange Theory Fitness over Facebook. And I'm not, validating either one of them, but the point is that they already have the trust. So if they have your trust, one, without earning it, earn it and respect it, and second, build upon that. So if you have a captured audience and you have a consumer, and a lot of these gyms like Equinox, we talk about Beachbody and an existing player, Lifetime Fitness, who just went public. This is where they go. This is where the engagement happen. They are closest with the consumer. They have an opportunity right now to get to know the consumer better than a big tech company ever will. I think they need to leverage that. So a lot of the work that we do is to build tech, is to tie the fragmented pieces of information that sits in a lot of different places together and then help contextualize it for that particular brand. So that could be, how do we improve them on engagement? How do we improve them on retention? I mean, there's a variety of factors, but I think there's a real opportunity here to really outdo the big technology companies today.
Do you think, Mo, that's a key ingredient for companies to successfully raise capital in today's marketplace? They have to be able to illustrate an effective digital roadmap to the investors to show them the levels of engagement going forward?
Absolutely. So I've been in a ton of investor meetings and a few board meetings over the last couple of months, and everybody wants to hear about your omni-channel strategy. And that goes for digital-only brands and brick-and-mortar brands. So there's a brand that we work with called City. I don't know if you've had a chance to hear about them or not, but they are a boutique growing fitness operator that we work with that has about 20 studios across the United States and has digital product. And they're going to be using the franchise locations as a retail store and as a way to get people on board, and the digital product to reach you anywhere. Well, that story is now and needs to replicate itself across everyone. Another example is you look at Peloton, right? Peloton is looking to open up more showrooms and potentially more studios. You look at Tonal and what they've done with Nordstrom, opening up in over 40 retail locations at Nordstrom. So there absolutely is a convergence in this omnichannel experience, because you have to meet people face to face to really help them with fitness. It's almost like your doctor, right? A lot of things can be done over telemedicine, but ultimately, when you have to go for your checkup, you've got to go in. And I don't think a lot's going to change there.
And what are your thoughts? Obviously, you're advising companies, big, medium, and small, on what they're doing when it comes to engagement. You've obviously seen some efforts that have tried, perhaps some have failed, some have succeeded, but what are your thoughts? What are you telling companies of how to succeed in tomorrow's marketplace?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's business basics. You've got to be running a good business. And there's been some clients that I'm working with, we've opted to close some sites, we've opted to expand in others, we've opted to move into other markets, all of that stuff, because, the goalposts have definitely shifted through this time. So I would say that, the key areas and the areas that I particularly focus in around boutiques, there's a lot that boutiques do right, and it's around community, and it's about looking after the good data, and it's about serving me in ways that I don't even know that I would find delightful yet. It's about taking that customer-centric approach that Mo's been talking about, and it's about creating that whole experience around that. And then once you know those people, you then also start to understand the other offshoots. We've seen a lot of the boutiques come together, and, whether it's an exponential rolling up 10, or whether it's a few other brands getting together and deciding to sort of be a house of brands, of which we all focus very strongly on what we do really well, but we do it in an environment because we know that people who also do HIIT training also like that style of power yoga and also need some mindfulness training over here. I've been working with a crew here, 3 Sages. In fact, we had that wonderful pitch competition just recently. And I think that the 3 winners of that were quite good to me in a way that I think that they're pitching us what's happening in the future. And I'll just probably speak to those for a second. So the first one was Q4, which was basically for the Q4. So basically for older adults, looking for cognition, looking for balance, looking for general health. So if you look at the boutique space, in many ways, it was created by the millennials for the millennials. But, there's a whole lot of boomer pocket still out there that's waiting to spend money and has needs and really wants a wonderful experience as well, as long as it's tailored to them. So that to me is a really interesting concept, and it's an idea I've been throwing around with colleagues for years, and I'm so glad someone's got around to doing it, is, sort of basically boutiques for boomers or people who have, other challenges as we move through life's phases. So balance, cognition, social, still doing the strength work. We know that our bodies, basically go in reverse unless we keep nice and strong, all of that good stuff. So that was one of the great concepts. The next one, of course, was 3 Sages, which is all around recovery. And it's about giving amazing, beautiful content from around the world, whether it be mindfulness or yoga or thoughtful practices, all of these things, and in a way that can also bring in the Theragun, which can also bring in, different aspects, different tools for recovery to really help you in that way. And again, we see a huge future in that as we continue to fry ourselves, and we need to learn to find these ways to do this in a really now way. So we have the technology, we've got the recovery, with the percussive mechanisms, we've got all of these things. We're getting better and better with our mindfulness work now. Many of the brands, and I'm a big fan of Calm and some of those brands that really are developing the voices in our heads and really doing that as well. And then, of course, our third one is our hero, Jack over there, who was really looking at hyper-personalising technology around the customer. There's that customer again. How do I perform better on my metrics, on what I deem important, and how is that situated around me, not just some big broad wearable that's just throwing out a general stat. It's around me and my goals and how do I optimize my life and my living and my health and my wellness. So when I look at where we just gave money to, those are some big things that I see sort of happening in the future. Yes, bricks and mortar will come back. Yes, I'll work out at home. Yes, I'll work out on holiday. Wherever I am, I'm going to be doing all of those things. Speaks a little bit to the omni-channel, and I'm going to do it in different ways. Part of the comment around Ursa was some of it was the same. I think some of the events going forward will be very different. I think people will find a way to make it even more engaging. I think they will use the realities. I think they will definitely be having hybrid events where some are there, some are not, some are participating but not there, all of those things. And I think our minds will be blown in a couple of years once events are taken to the next level. I also am spending a lot of time working on and thinking about how do we create communities that we've done so well to destroy, basically. We've gone and lived our little segregated lives, and now I'm a millennial and I only shop here and I only eat here and I only do this, and then I'm over here and all the old people are over there in the homes. What are we doing to reintegrate as a society? And I'm on a couple of interesting teams that are considering that. How do we rebuild a community with all the good stuff, technologically enabled, but also really pulling down on the things that we humans deem important, true social contact, healthy lifestyles, healthy choices, food, athleisure, entertainment, old people, young people, everyone sort of mixing and really having quite an optimal life and being looked after in a really careful and considered way. So I'm spending a lot of time in that space right now, which I know sounds like a big pile of fruit salad, but that is kind of where the world is right now, right?
I love it, Em. Well, let me ask you two questions back to back here. I'll ask the first question around technology and then non-technology. And Em just touched on it here. You've got this huge innovation happening now with companies needing to try and adopt and understand how they can deliver an omni-channel solution. They're getting this big omni-channel buzz every time they walk out into the news wires. But in addition, they're also having to try and navigate building what they believe is a much more complicated and comprehensive tech stack to try and make sure they're building this. How do you think, when it comes to technological innovation, how companies are looking at technology, how should companies try and address the technological innovation that's out there at the moment? How should they understand it? How should they navigate it? How should they build a solution that works for them? Let me ask you that first question. I'll come back to ask you the non-tech after that.
Sure. I mean, I'm going to go back to the consumer. You really have to look to see how the consumers evolve. And I'll give you an example. We look at some of the leaders in the tech category. One of the companies that I always go back to see is what is Netflix doing on the media side. And when you look at how Netflix has driven consumer engagement, I mean, they've transformed themselves. People have realized this today, a lot of the younger generation, they were a DVD company that you did in the mail. Like, I remember that. And completely evolved into, again, getting close with the consumer, driving recommendations, hyper-personalizing, hyper-localizing. And that's where I think these brick and mortar brands that they're looking to invest in tech need to go. So we take a multifaceted approach, and that really falls into three big buckets. The first one is how do you improve the consumer engagement from when you walk in and how you engage that consumer at the facility. So we typically fall back on a hospitality approach. So we'll look to see what are some of the leaders in hospitality doing. What is Four Seasons doing right now? What is Westin doing? And what are some of the leaders in hospitality doing to really engage the check-in experience? So things like being able to check in from your phone, being able to be assigned your room from your phone. We now do that with a lot of brands that we work in. You don't need to come in and sign a waiver online. You can do it from your mobile app. And then you get to go right into the studio or right into the session for where you are. And then after that, we look at what can we do within the experience, again, not to overwhelm or overstep the physical, but to enhance it. So whether that is bringing a community from within the gym together, it could be a spin class, it could be a weight session, whatever that might be, but how do we tie that? And the third bucket that we look at is omnichannel, right? So now you're home, now that you've left the facility, that shouldn't be where the engagement stops. We want to go with you. So what does the rest of your day look like? And that could mean simply a positive affirmation in the morning when you wake up. It could mean giving you content to work out at home when you can't make it into the gym because some emergency at home came up. And so we kind of take this three-pronged approach. So again, it's hospitality, it's in-studio, in-club engagement, and then how do we address it outside of the four walls?
Where will innovation happen more if it's not going to happen in tech and data? I mean, I suppose our industry has a chance now to start from a scratch to a degree, but what can we do better that perhaps we have never done before?
I think it's rethinking the gym in general. The gym has evolved. John Foley recently made a statement, I think it was in September, I believe at TechCrunch, that the gym is dead, right? And I don't think he really meant it, but he said it. And I think he said it because, one, Peloton was going through a really tough time with the tread recalls and really they're being attacked from all sides. So that was a bit of a defense mechanism there. I don't think the gym is dead, but I do think that the gym as we know it for the last, 40, 50 years has to change, right? Because think about this, when you walk into Planet Fitness, right now, the largest operator in the country, you have 400 plus pieces of equipment, and that's on the smaller side. It's overwhelming for a new person to come in and saying, what do I do, right? Where do I go? Now, I know that they're on the right path. They have a whole new digital strategy that they're going to be working on. But that's, I think the facilities themselves is not just about technology, it's about also rethinking your physical space. Because again, adjusting it for the consumer. The consumer now has evolved in what they expect at the workplace. I mean, if you think about the workplace in the last 40 years, it's changed from cubicles to a more open, a more welcoming, a more collaborative environment where you could have large kitchens, you have some conference rooms, but everyone kind of works together. Then you look at how much has the gym evolved over the last 40 years, with the exception of boutiques, not much at all. Why is that, right? Look at the media space. They've converted a lot. Look at the music space. They've changed a lot. You go into, a gym, it's like you're walking into Tower Records. I mean, Tower Records was a staple of the music industry, right? Emma, like you recall that, right? In LA, doesn't exist anymore. But why does the gym still feel iconically the same? So I think there's a lot of innovation set for those spaces.
Great points, well made, Mo. Let us turn on to the future. We're going to get our crystal ball out. We're going to dust it off, and we're going to talk all things going forward. Meta, AI, VR, augmented reality, they've all been talked about. You discussed them at the start of the interview, talking about the CES show. Things are moving so quickly. Where do you think the market will move to the next couple of years, and can we honestly keep up?
Yeah, look, I think we've all pitched where we think the world is going, and I think we now, as fast as things have been going, I think we now need to catch up a little bit. I've just been reviewing a couple of really cool concepts where they literally have brought entertainment together with fitness, with singers, with dancers, with the whole thing. So it's like what some boutiques try to do, and they do a pretty good job, but really take that to the nth. Take that to your favorite nightclub with your favorite instructor, your favorite dancer, your favorite music, everything, the lights show, the DJ, the whole thing. Put all of that together. And then maybe even bring in the realities as well. So whether I am actually wearing, the little cool Ray-Bans, or whether I'm wearing something else, or whether I'm sort of doing whatever. So I think that's going to get executed much better. At the moment, everything still feels a little bit clunky. I'm still wearing this and pushing that and downloading that and trying to coordinate that, and I'm still getting odd messages that don't relate to my day and they're not 100% on point. So we're getting that, but you can see that whole world is beginning to come into focus. Now, I think, and again, it comes back to Mo's great point around the customer. I'm going to be given an experience that I feel a new level of potency. I think it's going to be, and there are clubs now boutiques now where there are no instructors at all, where you literally go in and basically you get everything you need, exactly the instructor I want, exactly the music I want, the colorways I like, the equipment that I want out that day. Like, we're going to get our whole world arranged around us. for exactly how we like. And we know that there's concepts happening around that. So I think, we've dreamed a lot of these things. And I think now it's going to come down to execution, because I can still go to a gym and have a very average experience. I can still go to a class and have an okay class, but to be honest, some of the stuff I watch at home is pretty good right now. So if you're going to get me to come out and come to your facility, what are you going to do that's more special? And then I'm absolutely in love with the whole digital experience, where how can we use technology to truly enhance that moment when I am in the moment, and but still be there and be feeling it viscerally. And I think that is a really interesting thing that gets me really excited. So I think it's a little bit of catch up. I think there'll be a lot more consolidation in technology. And just to your earlier point, if you're new to the technology game, please don't try to do it all. There are a lot of great companies out there that can do many of the things that you need to do. So use them, and then just really focus in on what you're really good at and how do you serve your member. So I think things are about to get really good. I think the realities are going to get really good. I think it is going to take sort of the 3 to 5 years, but there's beginning to see little shining lights of facilities which are really getting me excited. Even John Reed here, even the work that RSG Group have done here in LA, beginning to really reimagine clubs and just use much better use of lighting and DJ, and really leaning into their entertainment muscle, I think is much more enticing than a boring old studio with a boring old room with, not much going on. So I'm excited about the future.
Mo, your thoughts?
Yeah, one I want to call, thinking about great studio experiences, One Rebel, who's not here in the US yet, has done a phenomenal job in the Middle East market and the UK in rethinking spaces, reimagining it. So I think that's something to pay close attention to and to look at. But looking at innovation in tech, I think I'm looking at things near term. And near term, there's going to be a ton of innovation really around how to leverage AI. Everyone's been talking about AI. I can tell you for the brands we're working on at least 5 AI vision-based projects. So the technology has finally come to a point now where I think next year we're releasing 2 brands in Q2 that have a really strong multi-camera vision-based product and look at what that's going to do, right? Is we could take the brains of some of the best trainers in the world and personalize that for you. So now you're at home. You might not be able to afford a trainer for $1,000 an hour, or you might not be in New York or LA where the best trainers are, but you could still get that experience. You could still get the correction, still get that motivation as if you were personally with them. The other part is hyper-personalized recommendations, also driven by AI. But bringing in other factors, bringing in your heart rate, your hydration, your nutrition, and really personalizing not just your workout, but driving your recommendations and behavior for what you do before the workout, what you do after the workout. We've been so focused on these 45 minutes that we spend, working out, but not a lot of focus on before and after. So I think that's going to be a big trend that's coming. Longer term, it was all the things that, was said by Emma, and, there's so much innovation that's happening, and it's hard to put like our finger on it right now. But one of the key things that Emma mentioned a few times is, it's clunky, and that the wearable is on your wrist right now. And I think that's going to change, right? I think it's going to start becoming, I don't think we're there yet. I don't think it's going to happen next year, but we're on the way towards getting there. One of the first things we're going to see, I think, is the wearables going away from your wrist. It's not a great place to collect data, but it's what we have right now. With all the ligaments and joints that are in there, there's so much other places to collect heart rate, movement, temperature data. And I think that's great news for the watch industry, right? Because you could now start wearing watches again. But I do think we're going to see a lot of innovation around patches, maybe things that you might even wear semi-permanently. We're seeing some innovation there. We're working on 2 projects right now that are patch related that you're going to wear on semi-permanently. It's about a year out from release. And you don't need to have your watch on. So I think innovation is going to happen there as well.
Well, I bought my very first Aura ring the other day there, and it's a fantastic piece of kit, but I can't train with it. It's a very interesting thing. It slips off, or I can't pick up a barbell.
When it scratches, my own wedding ring is all scratched up from lifting weights. Right? And that's me too. The reason I have not had an Aura personally, I love what they're doing. The Gen 3 product is phenomenal. But I can't work out with it, right? Unless I was just a pure endurance person.
Yeah. Closing thoughts, and Mo, let me ask you this. The past 18 months has no doubt changed that industry, but how has it changed you? I know there's been a lot of things happening. We've talked about the pressures of running businesses, of advising clients, of spending too much time on Zoom, the impact on your mental health. Even though the rainbows are coming out now, it's been a bloody tough 18 months. What have you learned from these last 18 months, Em?
I've learned when I look at my life now, I still have all the same people in them, which is a good thing. But I would say that what I do now is remarkably different. So, we launched a business, we pulled out of bricks and mortar and went in digital. So I would say I have a much broader perspective, and I feel like I've been through a digital transformation to actually operate in the world today. But I just feel like the amount of data, the acceleration of so many things, business practices, even just keeping an eye on what's happening in the markets versus, who are the new big players, what data have all the industries, all the adjacent industries piling in. I really feel like I've sort of done like about 10 MBAs back to back or something. I feel like I've been in business school for 18 months, and it's just, I feel much more measured, much more connected to the world, even though I haven't seen so many people, including yourself, for a long time. I feel a lot more connected, and I feel like we're able to now use data in ways that are helpful, but also to call out bad data if we don't think that that's taking us in the right direction as well. So I'm feeling like there's going to be a really big human moment coming as we continue to open up. Yes, there's going to be new rules. Yes, there's going to be new ways. But we are going to be so much better provided for, because we have all been working on what we're really good at and all advancing some kind of conversation. I think once we put all our hands back in the table in the middle again, I think it's really going to help us advance, better health, better happiness, and hopefully just help people a lot more. So that's kind of how I feel, I guess, philosophically around the whole thing right now. And I've just been so thankful to yourself and others to have been in conversations throughout those 18 months, because I know a lot of people have actually been very isolated and haven't had much to do or haven't known what to get on with. And I'm just one of those people that kind of just, well, that's not working, let's try over here. So I have definitely learnt the art of cutting and running. If something's not working, go over there and try something else.
Great point. And Mo, last thought?
Yeah, I mean, wow, the last 18 months, I think, has helped me reprioritize what is important. So one, as a company, we've more than doubled in size. We have over 150 employees now and expanded all of our locations. We actually opened up our London office during the pandemic. But I want to take this a little bit personal. I recently did an article in Men's Health. I can send the link with you, Ross, talking about my daily schedule. And look, I think the pandemic is really a tale of two sides. And to us, being on the more privileged side, we were able to, in a lot of ways, enhance our quality of life. And I fully recognize that there's a whole other side where they've really struggled a lot through the pandemic. But I'm going to talk about the side that I'm closest to. And for me, it's been good in a way that I was able to spend so much time with my family. And I have a 2.5-year-old, little Sloan, you might have heard her in the background. I put her to bed for 380 days straight. And that's never happened. I've never had a stretch since I turned 20 where I was home for so much. I was always out, traveling, not at home. So one, I was able to spend time with my wife, spend time with my child. I have 2 kids, but one's 12, so I don't need to put him to bed. I was able to eat family dinner. I mean, I think I made over 300 family dinners in a row and cook and enjoy this amazing time. So it's helped me reprioritize and say, what is important? The other thing that it's done is made things like this more acceptable, right? So now instead of flying to LA, once a month to meet with their clients out there, I can maybe go once a quarter and spend a couple of days out there because I could do all the other meetings over Zoom. And I think before the pandemic, it was almost like, well, if we were an important client, if this was an important meeting, you would be here, right? So I think now everyone's reprioritized that. And finally, I think how we view work. We are, even though we have physical locations, where in fact, I should invite you both. We're building out a beautiful new office here in Arlington for next summer with an innovation lab and a studio and all of that. But we're still a remote first company. We see the value in traditional spaces, just like I see the value in physical gyms and boutique studios. but we are a remote first company, and you don't need to come in every day, right? So, and we're okay hiring people from anywhere. So it's changed the way we look at talent and resourcing and expansion. So pre-pandemic to now, I think it's a completely different world.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's a very good note to wrap it up in there. Family first, focus on your health and focus on the positives. There are truly so many out there. We've got such an exciting journey ahead of us, ladies and gentlemen, as we move into this new health-centric, consumer-centric marketplace. I'm so excited. I know that Em and Mo will be right here with you to help you and your business go forward. Em, thank you very much as always for joining us. Mo, thank you very much for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, a fantastic conversation, and we'll see you on the other side. Take care. Ladies and gentlemen, as a special bonus session after what was a great conversation with Emma and Mo, we're just about to enjoy a very quick fire but exciting conversation with John Canarick. John is a managing director at North Castle Partners. He's sat on many boards across his years and currently sits on Barry's and also Echelon Fit, amongst others. He's got almost 2 decades of experience of investing in consumer-based private equity, and a huge part of his business at North Castle now looks at health, fitness, and wellness. Let's jump into a conversation with John. John, great to have you here. Thanks very much for joining us. 20 years almost in consumer-based private equity investment. You saw a lot of trends, you've followed a lot of data points, but perhaps over the last 18 months, what data points have you followed more than ever?
Well, specifically in the fitness category. First, thanks for having me. It's great to be with you and on the a part of the panel here. I mean, you can't help but follow the trend towards working out at home. I mean, that is by far and away the biggest, thing that grabbed the fitness industry. And you obviously had the Pelotons of the world and people that are completely focused on the home workout. And then you have all of the folks that have never been focused on the home workout moving into that category sort of, overnight or as fast as they possibly could. And so, that is the big trend. And the trend that we continue to watch, of course, is consumer behavior around home versus back to store.
Now, there's a lot of public deals, a lot of private deals being done in the last 18 months, but especially so in 2021, which is very, very encouraging for the market, John.
Yeah.
Any of those deals, be it public or private, piqued your interest more?
I mean, I've been probably most piqued by what's gone public. It's been really interesting to see how the market receptivity for F45 was I would say extremely strong, and whether they were the market was looking forward to a forecast of 100 million of EBITDA in 2022 or some discounted version of that. It's still an extraordinary growth and a very impressive financial performance if they achieve that, but it was a very strong IPO. Watching Exponential Fitness a couple of weeks later was also super interesting. Obviously not as strong. I think a little bit of bad luck on timing as the market just weakened over those couple of weeks, but still, it's traded up and it looks like the market's quite receptive to those two businesses. And then you have the corporate store business and Lifetime Fitness, achieving public and perhaps not the valuation that they were hoping for. But, I think the market looking forward and saying, yeah, I see that recovery. I mean, it's still based on I would say a respectable multiple of forward EBITDA, even if it's going to take a couple more years to get back to what Lifetime, had before COVID. So following that, following some of the rumors around Equinox, of course, and obviously they're still a private company, but, I don't know if that's going to last, forever. And so it's been, I would say the public markets for me has been the most interesting thing of the last, at least the last 6 months. Maybe the 6 months prior was all about the private rounds, big valuations raised in connected fitness.
Yeah, there was a lot of raised. I think apart from Whoop and a few others, there was $2 billion raised across quite a number of smaller players at the at-home connected fitness market. That's quite incredible. Looking at that market, and I suppose you also saw in the last couple of weeks iFit pull their IPO. Do you think that some investors in that market segment are getting a little bit jittery, perhaps, maybe seeing a bubble ahead, or are they just waiting to see things just smooth themselves out before reinvesting in 2022? What do you think's on the horizon for next year?
Yeah, I think, look, the iFit pulling or not getting the valuation they want and therefore not going is certainly an interesting sign of how the market is viewing where we are in the recovery. And as an industry owner myself, both of four-wall and at-home fitness or investor myself, there is some level of uncertainty around 2022 and 2023 demand, just given the extraordinary growth of the category. And I think that the public markets probably looked at iFit and said, wow, like you've grown a tremendous amount, right, over the last couple of years. And you've in my opinion, I'm not saying that the market said this, in my opinion, very impressively transitioned from, a traditional sort of old school company into a connected fitness business, and but spent a lot of money to do so. And so I think that they probably had a little bit of a hard time looking forward into 2022 and buying, taking the company public on a strong 2022 forecast. And I would imagine if iFit hits their numbers, which I think is quite possible, I don't know what level of growth they'll achieve in 2022, of course. They're already a big business, right? So I think they'll probably be able to come back to the markets, and I think the markets just want to see how this plays out. I think there's still, very strong demand for at-home fitness. We're still very bullish about the future of Echelon, which of course plays really into the mass market in a big way. Although we are a fraction of the size of iFit and obviously Peloton, and so. It'd just be fascinating to see how that all plays out, whether they do come back to being public. But I just to go back to your base question, I think the iFit polling or lack of getting public is really about uncertainty of the next 12 or 24 month forecast period.
Now, Peloton had a bit of a wobble, to be understatement, this month. Do you think that overcorrection, or maybe even a wanted correction in the market, is going to start to maybe give investors a bit more confidence that things are actually now at a place where they can see upside? Or do you think that actually might scare off some investors going forward?
Yeah, no, I think the former. I mean, I think that this was a correction in valuation because that level of growth perhaps can't continue, right, for the next 3 years unabated. And I think they're still calling for, a growth year, which, if you think about, growing off of what was an incredible 2021 for the industry, I think that's an impressive feat if Peloton does that, and all the other players like iFit, and of course our own business, which we expect to grow. And I believe investors will now say, okay, this is a more reasonable way to value this category. It wasn't going to take over the entire world of fitness. People are going back to the clubs, and there has to be some balance in that conversation. I don't know that investors are piling in tomorrow or today based on this correction, but I think if we see it, calm a bit over the next few weeks, then I think people will gain comfort that, okay, maybe 6 or 7 times forward revenue is not the right valuation metric, but maybe something a little bit more modest.
No, it's great to see so much capital pile into the market, venture capital, private equity, institutional money, very encouraging as a whole. Perhaps looking at the marketplace, you've obviously experienced people coming to your door, tapping there, asking for funds, asking to be put into the next fundraising cycle. I suppose you've had offers of all different types and varieties. What are you looking at now in terms of what excites you most from a pitch from a team? Is it product-based? Is it team-based? Is it data-based? And perhaps where do some of these companies get it right, and where do some of these companies get it wrong?
It's so nuanced, but I'll try to, you gave me a couple of category choices, and there's no question it is the combination for me, for North Castle, who's really a consumer brand investor. And we are, of course, therefore invested in technology because consumer tech is becoming, more and more closely linked. But historically, legacy-wise, we're a consumer investor. And so for me, it's not the data play. I know people that do know how to monetize data, and that's a big topic and a big category. And I was at the a fitness technology summit just yesterday, and someone on one panel said if we had to take a shot for every time we heard the word data, we'd all none of us would walk out of here, right? So for me, it's not that, but I think it is for a lot of folks. For me, it's the product, right, and how great that product is. And it's not just about being great, right? It's also the cost structure of that product. So there's a lot of great stuff out there that you can get to the home for $5,000. Well, that's not necessarily a great product, right? Because it's quite expensive. It may be a great product for a small audience. But there's some cool stuff out there that may retail for $4,000 or $5,000. That's in my opinion, more likely a smaller market. But yes, product value we look at very closely, and team, right? I mean, team is everything. It's just so important to have a great entrepreneur and a great team that surrounds that person or people that founded that business, and so that's critical. The other component, Ross, which I think will get more and more discussion in the coming years, but I've been wrong about this before, is path to profitability. Right. So Peloton, I have the utmost respect for everything that they've accomplished. They accomplished it with $1 billion of capital, right? That's a lot of money. And I'm not saying that they couldn't have accomplished it for less, but they probably wouldn't have grown as fast, right? There's some trade-off that you make there. And we've seen Tonal raise hundreds of millions, and Tempo raise hundreds, and iFit, of course, raise hundreds, despite being historically a profitable enterprise. And there's plenty of other examples, within that as far as capital raising goes. So what we look for is a believable path to profitability that's not 5 years or 7 years out, right? We want to believe that is 12 or 24 months out. And I think that's going to become increasingly important. I can say outside of the fitness landscape, I think we're seeing that become a bigger and bigger part of the conversation, particularly around all D2C brands or D2C native brands, whether they're selling sneakers or clothing, regular clothing, or beauty and personal care, whatever the case may be. I think there's a little bit more scrutiny now on that path. There's been tremendous increases, as you probably know, in customer acquisition costs on the pure D2C side. And there's a lot of sensitivity around that. And whenever we're talking to entrepreneurs or looking at businesses, we're certainly heavily scrutinizing that line.
Now, data is a heavily used word, so is innovation. I think if we had a shot for that as well, we'd all be in trouble, John. But when you look at innovation, it tends to be tied this year to data and technology. Where do you think innovation will play a role in this sector going forward? And maybe to one of your points, we're seeing now the fitness industry become much more consumer savvy, see themselves actually being consumer businesses, lifestyle businesses, rather than just your traditional fitness. That will encounter a whole range of challenges and also opportunities. But where does innovation really lie for the fitness and wellness industry if it's not in data and technology?
Well, I think data is critical. I think that the consumer, probably wants one source, right? So to me, the innovation is around that concept, right? It's around really good APIs and one source, but it's hard to imagine, not saying this won't happen, right? But it's hard to imagine that an entrepreneur is going to be that one source when Apple wants to be that one source and Google wants to be that one source and Amazon. Now, look, the Whoop story is very impressive, right? I mean, they're really, on a wrist wearable are really competing against the big guys. And obviously Fitbit did it before they got, acquired. And so there are ways, but I think that innovation is, if we're talking about a physical product or a great workout experience, content-based, but ultimately things do have to sort of work into an ecosystem. And I think that applies to the four-wall world as well. People do want to see their data come up into one source and have one view of their week of workouts, or they're this or they're that. Now, personally, I'm not that person. I was kind of laughed at I know when I get a good workout, right? I can feel a good workout. I don't need a watch to tell me, but I think a lot of people feel differently than that, and they do like to see it. So that's one form of innovation, and then I guess where I'm more focused, because that to me is real tech, right? That's not what North Castle thinks about or does. We're a consumer investor. I think about innovation in content, and there's at the moment, right, there's like several categories of content that we think about. There's I'll call it the Peloton style, Echelon style, the live class, whether it's on demand or not, it's that live feeling. There's the scenic, right? There's the scenic types of rides that many people love, right? They get a big percentage of our views, certainly, are scenic rides. I think there's the new scenic, which is like the computer animated version, right? Which has more tricks to what you can do because it's not real. You're not actually filming in the Himalayas. And then, of course, there's full gamification, and that starts to split off, right? And like, where does virtual reality play into this whole category is a major question in the world of fitness innovation, in my opinion. Obviously, Facebook and Oculus clearly leaning, pretty heavy into that and believing that there's a role for VR fitness. And, I think that there is a role. How that continues to evolve is something we certainly think a lot about and are watching very closely.
Well, I think a conversation about the metaverse could be next on the list for next year, John. Closing question, if you don't mind. Let's have a look at, we're coming out of COVID, we're coming out of this pandemic. You had your thoughts 12 months ago, you have your thoughts now. What do you think will change in the industry forever? What things might revert back to norm, be it good or bad? And perhaps any contrarian views you have?
I went into COVID as an Echelon investor, a very big believer that over the long term, there was an omni-channel opportunity that had to be realized. And consumers can create their own omni-channel experience, if you will, through the Apple Watch or the other device, the other wearable, that they bring all of their experience back into one source. However, I believe that the combination of a great home and great four-wall workout experience is going to be a major winner in the category. And I give Equinox a lot of credit. The pandemic obviously has dramatically, hurt them, but they, in my opinion, were the first major fitness club company to lean into that, right? They did a major fundraise before COVID, so their plans got disrupted around what was then Veris and is now Equinox Plus and the SoulCycle bike. And I do believe that that's the biggest thing to watch is, as people return to the gym, will that gym be able to provide that customer the whole experience or only the gym part? There's no question in my mind that we are going to work out more at home forever more than we were going to be if COVID never happened. There's no question. Now, how much more? I think that is the question. It's a material amount. It's a question of what percentage share. And the good news for the category is people will work out more, right? The ability to have home plus in store is more variety, and variety is what keeps us working out, right? Nothing like boredom that get people back on the couch. And that's why we see attrition sort of in the industry the way that we do. But I do believe sometimes I work out in the gym and sometimes I work out at home. So can I do a great job as a retailer, as a four-wall operator in providing that home experience? I think doing it with just very basic content is not the answer. It has to be more holistic than that. Is there a place to then be really, truly holistic and be the nutrition plan and the meditation and sleep plan? That I'm a little less sure of. I think there is room for specialization in this world. And I think the people that are good at nutrition and diet will be the same people that are good at nutrition and diet. And the people that are good at fitness will be good at fitness. But I think within fitness, you can be both good at in-store and at home.
Look, it's great to see Echelon do so well over the past 12 months, and great to see Barry's also with the release of Barry's X. Very exciting, and to your point, like that real immersive in-studio, at-home experience, John. I really appreciate your time, and good to talk to someone who's got such a long-term, passionate view and outlook for the industry. We look forward to more good news from all the companies you work with, and thanks for your support across these years and helping the industry get better and stronger. Thanks, John.